Gonna have to get back to learning my CW and try some of this stuff. The Volunteer Monitoring Program. Back in 2019, the Volunteer Monitoring Program was created to replace the Official Observer Program. I don't know if it was more than a name change or not, but it's volunteers that monitor the airwaves, sort of delegated by the FCC for people that are violating the rules and regulations.
I wonder if there's still OO call.
Not that I'm aware of.
It's official observers.
Used to have special call signs.
Yeah,
really.
OO's into some.
Huh.
Now the snitches have gone underground.
Yeah. Hiding in plain sight.
I'd better stop saying chicken dinner, chicken dinner.
Right. Okay, so it's amateur volunteers that formally enlist to monitor the airwaves. The intent is to encourage amateur radio operators to self-regulate and comply with the rules, so the FCC doesn't have to get involved and do bad things. And they use direction finding techniques to locate the stations violating FCC rules.
Something else to use the Kraken for.
In fact, there was a case here recently where they tracked some violators down. It was what, $25,000 fine or something like that, I believe. And I'm assuming it was these volunteer monitors.
I had a real obnoxious owner of a Gulfstream last week that refused to allow access or show up to turn off an ELT that was going on. When we told them the FCC would send the FBI out, they found a way to get us the key and turn it off.
So what is the Volunteer Monitoring Program?
There you go. Alpha.
Alpha sounds good. Which of the following are objectives of the Volunteer Monitoring Program?
Doggy.
To self-regulate and comply with the rules before they bring the hammer down. What procedure may be used by volunteer monitors to localize a station whose continuous carrier is holding a repeater on in their area? All the above? Why would you say
A? Because you have about 30 dB attenuation between vertical and horizontally polarized. So if you have someone operating,
Well, now, let me ask you a question. How do you determine the vertical and horizontal signal strength?
You just rotate your beam that you're using to search for with.
Okay. So what's that going to tell you? Couldn't tell you where they're at.
Well, it'll tell you whether the antenna is polarized horizontally or vertically.
That's true.
And if they are polarized horizontally in the 2-meter band, it's a lot easier to spot because there aren't many sideband stations. Because it's a sideband that do horizontal. It's just
those bad sideband VHF people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those people that like to shoot DX for 200 miles or 300 miles on 2 meters.
Okay. Well,
talking to the Bahamas and Cuba.
The FCC thinks the answer is B.
And I say the answer is fire up the Kraken DF.
HF operations. So in order to make contact over great distances, Usually you use a directional antenna like a beam antenna, a Yagi or a log periodic or a beam or a quad, something that concentrates the power in one direction so you get higher power density and more effective radiation in one direction.
Last time I went out, I just used a mag mount on the bacon.
To figure out where to point your directional antenna, you use an azimuthal projection map, which is a map that shows the true bearings and distances from your location. So you can, I believe, you can download one of those custom off of the internet. You put in your Maidenhead or your GPS coordinates, one or the other or both, and actually get a azimuth map. And then you can figure out with some other stuff on the internet where you need to point your antenna in order to get to a particular grid, let's say. Which of the following describes an azimuthal projection map?
Bravo. Yep, you're right.
Bravo. I didn't realize they showed distances.
I always thought a globe worked fine.
Okay. Most of the time you're communicating over, when you're doing propagation with hops, over the short path, which is the shortest or most direct path between two stations. But sometimes propagation can be such that the long path actually provides a better signal than the short path. And of course, sometimes you get there short and long, and then you get an echo. But the short path is going to be 180 degrees from the long path, or vice versa, just opposite direction. So how is a directional antenna pointed when making a long path contact with another station? The opposite direction of the short path heading. There's standard procedures for making contacts, identifying your station. One of the good recommended good practices is to use the NATO phonetic alphabet. Now, in other countries, you will hear other phonetic alphabets, like I'm not sure what the Europeans call theirs, but they refer to a lot of cities.
Norway. Norway 6, Italy, Italy.
A good way to indicate you're looking for a contact is to repeat CQ a few times, like CQ, CQ, CQ. This is W3RDL, and wait, see if anybody replies. It would be recommended because can't tell on the receiving end how clear it is, that they have a better chance of understanding your call sign if you did it phonetically, Whiskey 3 Alpha or Romeo Delta Lima instead of W3RDL. And one of the examples of the NATO phonetic alphabet is Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, so on and so forth. They ask about those four. So Which of the following indicates you're looking for an HF contact with any station?
Charlie.
Repeat CQ a few times, followed by your call sign, and then listen, and then repeat it until you're tired of doing it or somebody replies. Sometimes you hear stations calling CQDX instead of simply CQ. If the station calling CQDX is in the contiguous 48 states, then they're looking to make contact outside the contiguous 48 states. So if you're within, you're not supposed to reply. Alaska and Hawaii are considered outside the contiguous, so they're fair game for a DX. So generally, who should respond to a station in the contiguous 48 states calling CQDX?
Any station outside the lower 48?
Right. Why do we refer to that as the lower 48?
Because it's lower than Alaska.
Oh. Okay.
And it's 48 states.
And Alaska is not exactly contiguous.
It's not connected now. You have that.
It's close,
Yeah.
but it's not quite there. Another way to establish contact is to join a conversation already in progress. We call that breaking in.
I wonder if the US did like, Russia and just invaded a little bit of Canada to make it continuous, how that would, I don't want anything to do with British Columbia. Well, if you make it the United States, you know what I'm saying, then it becomes part of Washington. Yeah. Or a new state, so we get a new flag.
Okay, so we can break in. To do that, you simply say your call sign when you detect a lull in the conversation. And like Byron said, if you're doing it on 80 meters, they're going to ignore you. So what's the recommended way to break into a phone contact?
Call sign once.
Bravo.
Just contact. Contact.
Wonder what reply you get back if you're doing breaker breaker.
They will probably ignore you.
You got us a convoy.
Yeah.
At the beginning of a contact, most stations exchange signal reports. They say the reason is to allow each station to operate according to conditions. So if you're getting back a signal report that you're very low, you could adjust the direction of your beam antenna, perhaps. Maybe you're not pointed exactly in the right spot, or increase your power, or do something. Or the opposite, if you're coming in at S9 plus 30, you might want to back off a little bit. So why are signal reports typically exchanged at the beginning of an HF contact?
Aloysius.
Good old alpha. Okay. When using voice or phone, it's good practice to use the NATO phonetic alphabet. Says it's the most widely used, at least in the United States, but
Isn't that prejudice against other cultures?
probably because I hear a lot of non-NATO ones.
So you're telling me that amateur radio is not woke yet.
Right.
We're colonialists.
So if you use the phonetic alphabet, it makes it easier to understand your call sign, especially if it's a weak signal.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
You can use it during a contest, however, it slows you down. And I guess it's a question of how bad you want to make the contact versus how many contacts you want to make per minute. So in contest mode, people don't always follow all the rules. Just like anything else in life, people that don't necessarily follow the rules. But the FCC regulations always apply, even during a contest. So you should identify your station per the FCC regulations. But they only encourage phonetic alphabet. Which of the following are examples of the NATO phonetic alphabet?
David.
Yeah, I always want to say Alpha Baker because that's the military one, right?
Yep.
Alpha Baker Charlie. So NATO has a stick in Bravo. Which of the following is required when participating in a contest on HF frequencies?
Kitty, cat.
Identify per normal FCC regulations. Okay, QRP. There you go, Byron.
There we go.
Operating with very low output power. Some amateurs find to be a challenge.
Yeah.
So when it becomes too easy to make contacts at 100 watts, you go try to do it at 5 watts without an antenna.
That sounds like you're doing FTA.
Well, you can do that. It's sometimes called QRP or reduced power operation.
As opposed to QRO. Open that thing up, baby.
Do you take pride in always operating with low output power?
I've never operated more than 100 watts unless it's a special event station. And we're the dog pilot.
Okay. There are many clubs that promote QRP. I guess our club kind of does.
Yeah.
PCARS, I don't think does at all.
I recommend people start out with QRP because it makes you a better operator. Because you learn to listen first and realize whether you're going to be able to make contact with that station. If I'm QRP and I'm not receiving an S9 from that station, chances are I'm not going to make contact with it. So if I'm 100 watts into S9, yeah, I'm going to make a contact real quick. Or at least I should, unless they're in a bad local noise environment.
Okay. Well, I should have my QMX built here in a few weeks. We'll try it out.
Yeah.
What is QRP operation?
Baker.
Low power transmit operation. I'm not sure why and when they gave up the log requirement. I guess that's fairly recent.
It's been a while.
Okay. But they claim it's still a good practice to keep a log.
I'm glad I saw this. I didn't know it wasn't required anymore.
Particularly if you get a request from the FCC about something, if you've got the log, it kind of helps answer their question, but it isn't required. So why do many amateurs keep a station log? Just in case the FCC comes, they don't actually ever come knocking on your door, though, do they? Don't they send a letter?
We hope they know.
kind of like my pilot's log.